Let's jump to the defensive front. The Niners have allowed only 159 rushing yards through 3 weeks, Jack. You got to go back to 1996 to find a better start through 3 games for the team in that department. And that's good stuff, and that's really good when you consider what they looked like in the preseason, where they gave up 6 yards a carry in the final 2 preseason games. And you were there in the room when I asked Shanahan about the run D, and he's like, yeah, if it was based on what I loved about his answer, he's like, if it was based on what we saw in the preseason, I'm very concerned. He even grew my point and said I didn't like the way they looked against or the way we looked against the Raiders against the run either. But then he also brought up, hey, Joshua Kelly had a long run, and Max Duggan, we didn't defend the zone read very well, and he got some yards, and we were number 1 against the run last year, and he seemed to feel like there were reasons to believe that it would get better. Here we are in the regular season, we're 3 weeks in, it has gotten better. What's the real Niner run D? Is the the run D we've seen so far in the regular season their run D, or is this the run D that got just destroyed in the preseason their run D?
I think we're seeing it now. During the preseason, we didn't see a lot of these starters, so we didn't really see their run D very much. I go back to the joint practices with the Raiders, and there was a little bit of worry for me after watching the joint practices. I thought that was a little bit of a struggle for them. And then we saw what happened in the games after, but the starters weren't on the field for a lot of that. So I think what we've seen these last couple of weeks is really where they are. They're going to get their first real big test. Obviously, is going to come against the Cowboys in so many different ways. That's another one. But I think when you're looking at this defensive line, you've got to talk about how good Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave have been with really solidifying that interior. And on top of that, Javon Kinlaw as well. Kinlaw's, he's finding himself now. He's no longer the first round disappointment necessarily. He's now just a rotational piece, which is I shouldn't even use the word just. Now he's a rotational piece in this defense, and he's playing a big role because he's coming in. He's doing a really nice job eating up defenders, and when it's pass time, he's doing a really good job of heating up the quarterback. So I think that the defensive front's playing really well, and then I think when they're doing what they're supposed to do, then all of a sudden you see Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw and these other guys making plays, and it all just goes together. But it really starts with those guys up front, and they're really balling out.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. Joey Nichols agrees with you. He says Kinlaw's balling. He's balling. Gregus Khan's got an interesting one here, too. He says Javon Kinlaw led the 49ers against the Giants last night with a pass rush win rate of 33.3%. I talked to Javon in the locker room afterwards. He's just he's in a great spot right now mentally and physically. And it's great to see because, Eric Armstead kind of shared with us earlier this summer that Javon's struggles and the criticism that he's received because of his struggles really get to him. Like some guys can block it out. Heck, some guys thrive under the negativity. I watched Barry Bonds in baseball for years. I almost felt like Barry was better when you ripped him. He was better when you booed him. He was better when you ripped him. He had supreme confidence, and he thrived in that environment, Jack. Javon Kinlaw is not Barry Bonds. He hears the criticism. It bothers him. He gets down. He can't just stay above it. Now he's got his knees are healthy. I talked to him about his knees. He's like, finally, I got my knees to the right spot where they're healthy. He can play with good bend. He can play with leverage. It's a leverage game. Low man wins. He's really been very, very effective this year, and I hope it can continue because this is it. It's time. If he has a big year, he's going to solidify himself in the league, and he's going to get another contract, whether it be here or somewhere else. But if he has a bad year, he could easily wash out of this league in a very short amount of time. He's such a physical dominator that he will get another 2 or 3 opportunities in other spots if the Niners ever say goodbye. But as far as fulfilling the potential of being a mid-first round pick and really establishing himself as a guy who's going to make serious money in the league and a guy who's going to play well into a second contract, so on and so forth, he needs this year. It's vital for him to put out good tape, especially on the heels of that NFC Championship game where I just don't think physically he was right. I don't think he could play with any kind of a bent knee, any kind of pow. And if you're a long cut and you can't play with leverage and with a bent knee, you lose all your strength. So it was like Jason Kelce was moving him around with relative ease, and it looked really bad. This year, that player that we saw in the championship game get moved doesn't look like the same guy. He's getting up the field. He's playing with leverage. He's absorbing blockers. He's keeping O-linemen from climbing to the second level against Greenlaw and Warner. He looks worlds better. I hope it can continue.
Yeah, that's like the play that Warner when Warner blew up Harris in the game against Pittsburgh, right? That was all set up by Kinlaw eating up two offensive linemen and opening up that running lane for Warner to shoot the gap, right? And I just got to say real quick, Larry, I pointed this out to people on my channel a couple of different times. I saw the interview that you did with Javon in the locker room.
Yeah,
week before last. That was one of the best videos that I've seen around the 49ers. Just
Thank
because, and the reason I say that is because of Javon Kinlaw has dealt with a lot since he joined the 49ers. And you can tell when he comes to the podium and everybody's talking. Like I remember being in Vegas and he came and he talked and he just had an attitude about him. But I don't think it was an attitude where he was trying to come off the way that he was coming off. It's just more of a defense mechanism with the way that he was acting. And you can tell in that interview that as you're talking, we were hearing Javon Kinlaw just have a conversation, and you're able to listen to him be thoughtful with his answers. I thought it was a tremendous glimpse into who he is as a person and as a player, and what struggles that he's gone through in the first few years. So I just want to shout that out. I've talked about it on my channel a couple different times to people.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'll tell you, I wish I'd started the recording a minute prior to the interview, because I walked up to him. I said, "Hey, Javon, how you doing, man?" He's like, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And I said, I go, "Hey, can we do a minute or two?" He's like, "Absolutely." And I go, "How you doing? How's your summer going?" He's like, "Good, good." And he goes, "How's your family doing?" And I said, "They're doing good. I got my boy in college." We talked for 30 seconds before, and it was like, I don't know. I don't know how to how exactly to describe it. I don't even know what point I'm really trying to make, other than just that, there's this whole other side to Javon, that away from the bright lights, away from the group setting. Like some guys are great in the group setting, with 15 different people asking different questions and the lights and everything. And other guys really are not good in that setting. I think he's much better in a one-on-one where you can kind of feel him out a little bit. He can kind of feel you out. And once he's kind of disarmed because he doesn't feel like he's going to be attacked or set up in any way, he's a real decent quality guy who cares about other people. And I just thought it was really, really great. And then, after that exchange, then I turned it on as far as the camera, and we started recording everything. But I really like the guy, and I'm really rooting for him. I know he's had some. You could say he's been a disappointment. Heck, there's people that have attached the bust label to him. I just think it's premature. And some guys, they just day one, they just hit the ground running and they're just good. Other guys, have to adjust to life as a pro. And I'll tell you what's really interesting is when he starts talking about Eric Armstead, and you realize they're not just line mates. And they're not just teammates, and they're not just friends. It's like Eric Armstead to Javon is like, and I said to him, I go, "What kind of relationship is it?" And he's like a big brother. He's like a big brother to me. He's like on the field, off the field. He just makes sure I'm okay. And I felt like Eric, who's also a very, very down to earth, thoughtful guy, was kind of trying to share with us media people this summer that, hey, tread a little lightly around Javon. He didn't say that word for word, but it was kind of like, hey, you know what? the criticism bothers him. He's a good man, and he's trying to carve out this career, and he's got some challenges, and sometimes he gets down. I don't know. It just, to me, it was like very human for Armstead to share that, and Armstead's a killer guy, but I just think it's so unique that you can kind of tell. It's like Eric Armstead is like a very important person in Javon Kinlaw's life, and these guys are going to be lifelong friends.
Yeah, and you heard Armstead after the NFC Championship game, right? All that negativity that was going towards Kinlaw, and Armstead came out and he said, "No, that's not on Javon, that's on me." So I think that's, again, I think that's just Armstead understands, I think, what Kinlaw is going through, because Armstead's been that target of that
right.
negativity also, right? Because he was another first round guy who didn't
play with leverage, high cut.
Didn't really get numbers until, it took a few years until 2019 is when he finally turned it on. And I've come to appreciate Eric Armstead's game a lot more in the last couple of years, because he's a really good interior defensive lineman. He does a really good job eating up those offensive linemen against the run. Does a good job of getting pressure in the pass. He's not going to show up in the stat sheet. If you want to see how good Eric Armstead is, you need to watch the film, because a lot of times it doesn't show up, and he's not getting credit for a sack. He's not getting credit for a pressure or what have you on your Pro Football Reference stat sheets. And so I think you just really need to watch him play and to see how good he is. And so I think Armstead understands where he's coming from.
We're almost time to wrap it up because I got to go pick up my kid. But Crusher says Jerome Hargrove is carrying the D line. I mean, Javon Hargrave. I don't know if you saw. Did you see when Shannon Sharp called Javon Hargrave Jerome Hargrove?
I did. I saw that. That's
He's like, well, they got Jerome Hargrove. Yeah, Hargrave, and he had a bunch of people around his locker last night. But man, Hargrave, what a force of nature. And I can really see, how dominant he is. It's like there really is no way to block Javon Hargrave. He plays with leverage. He plays with such body position and lean that you can't stop him. I mean, he's bringing he reminds me a little bit of a better pass rushing version of Dana Stubblefield, and people remember Dana as a defensive player of the year, I think, in 1997. Hargrave's in that category. I mean, he cannot be blocked, and you got two guys on that line now with Bosa and Hargrave that cannot be blocked. And it's a huge get for the Niners. It's a huge loss for the Eagles. I thought Hargrave was great last night.
No, he was. I think you look at that game last night, according to Pro Football Focus, 23 pressures on Jones last night. 18 of those came from three of the guys we just, from Bosa, Hargrave, Kinlaw, and Armstead. 18 of those 23 pressures came from those four last night. Kinlaw with 4, Armstead with 3, and then 6 and 5 for Bosa and Hargrave. But Hargrave and Armstead are the heartbeat of the defensive front, because winning up the middle, the Foreigners talk about all the time, that's number one. And I tell you, quarterbacks, they're okay with pressure coming around the edges, but when you get pressure up in their face, up the middle, that's what really bothers them. And having Hargrave, you almost had me say Jerome, Hargrave and Kinlaw right there, coming up the middle, that really gives you a lot of problems, a lot of fits when you got that. And then Kinlaw a couple of times last night as well. So it's really that middle of that interior is really doing a good job.